Hi everyone, this is Triple Valve Metro Camel. Hope you're having a great day wherever you are out there, and thank you very much for joining me today, much appreciated. Now, as you know, there are many videos on YouTube covering different topics and different subjects, and you can literally pick one out of hundreds and thousands of videos to watch about a specific item or item of interest. And I want to say thank you very much today for choosing to watch my video on the following topic, and it really means a lot to me that you've watched my video, because there's a lot of people out there that are a lot better at what they do than me, but thank you, and I'm humbling myself today and saying thank you. Anyway, more importantly, what we're going to be talking about today, or rather looking at practically, is how to do some basic soldering, and I stress the word basic. I'm just showing you the basics of what you need to do to get you going. This video is really aimed at people that have come into the hobby and are perhaps soldering for the first time and finding the whole thing a little bit daunting and a little bit strange and weird, because nothing's working at the moment. They can't seem to get the perfect solder joint. Anyway, hopefully by the end of this video you'll be able to go away and have a practice on your own with your soldering equipment and hopefully get some great results, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So before we begin our soldering project, what we need to do is get everything prepared and ready, and preparation is the key also to great soldering. As with anything in the hobby, you've got to pre-plan what you're going to do. So we've got our soldering station here, and the first thing you're going to do is wet the sponge in the cleaning tray area here, and this sponge is, I've wet this about 15 minutes ago and it's still very moist and wet, so that's what you want. I generally tend to use, it sounds a bit crazy, but I use a water bottle, because if I'm going to put water in thus so, if you sort of pour it in with a cup or you go to a tap, it means you've got to take it away somewhere and you're going to spill water everywhere and put too much water in, and you can control exactly how much water you put in with this. So you only want a few little drops, and it will take just a few drops to puff up and expand to moisten, because when these are not wet, they're like really brittle and dry, as you'll probably know. So just add a few drops of water with one of these bottles, for example, and it just basically keeps it nice and neat and does the job. So that's my little silly idea for the day anyway. It works for me. So we've got our soldering station there, and someone also mentioned, I believe, about how you get the actual iron to work correctly and how do you get the bits off and things like that. Well, my iron, for example, is an Antex soldering iron, which is this model here. Hopefully you can see that on the camera at home. Turn it around like that. I did do a review on this particular iron a while ago, and this is probably the best soldering iron I've ever used. So I've been modelling trains and modelled railways since I was about 11 years old. I'm now 42 this year, so it's been quite a while since I've been in the hobby, and my first iron was really naff. And this is the best iron probably money can buy, to be honest with you, with the hobby. It's a really great iron, and I do a full review on this in one of my videos on the channel, so check it out afterwards if that's helpful for you. Anyway, someone mentioned about they couldn't get these bits off, how you change the bits and basically make sure the bit's on there and get it off and whatnot. You can use a heat transference paste, which looks a little bit like flux, and you just put a little bit on the shaft there and you can put your bit on. Before I use my iron, what I always do, I always check first of all that everything on the iron is where it should be and nothing is broken or there's no damage. So what I do normally, I start from the tip and just check the shaft, make sure it's not cracked or it's not bent or nothing's physically loose on there. So I'll just start from the end there and work my way down through the iron to the handle, make sure everything's on there, nothing's come loose or it's not broken. And then we get to the end of it, which is quite important, which you've got the electrical lead that goes into the heating element. Make sure that's not come away, the cord is okay, and you work your way down basically all the way to the plug. That's a British plug, by the way, for those of you overseas. It's a bit scary, I know. It's got a third pin on there. It's got an earth pin. You guys probably, where you are in the States, have a 2-pin. So I always check the plug. So whatever country you live in, you've got a plug on the end of this thing, obviously. Always check the plug as well, make sure everything's not come adrift and it's all electrically safe. If it is damaged, replace it or get someone to replace it for you that's qualified. Anyway, that's the safety bit over with. So we're going to put the tip on the end of the iron like that, and as you can see, it just slides on quite neatly, and you can just twist it as you go and it will literally pop into place, and that is now ready to go. So what I'm going to do, I'm just now going to plug it in and put it into the soldering station, and we'll get going. So I've got my plug board over here out of shot, so I'll just plug it in. Right, and then what we'll do now is we'll just sit it in here, and when you sit it in the station, always make sure the bit rests up against that little V-shaped bracket in there. Alright, so I'll just bring it out like that. I'm just going to stop the video a second while this heats up, because it doesn't take that long to heat up, but I'm going to just adjust the camera so you can get an overall better shot, so stay with me. Okay, so I've now adjusted the camera shot so it's a little bit above to where it was before. Hopefully you can see a bit better at home, and you'll find what I'm about to show you and demonstrate very useful and very handy. So we've got our iron in the soldering station at the moment. It's getting nice and hot, or it should be hot. It doesn't take long to warm up, and we need to bring in our solder, and I'm going to be using today, it's 60/40 alloy solder, and it comes in reels like this. You can buy it off eBay or any good electrical supply shop or hobbyist shop. You can buy it basically on eBay at a very good price. Doesn't cost a lot, and it comes in reels like that, so it's quite a lot on there. And what I normally do, I just reel off a little bit like that, and then what I'm going to do is just bend it up at an angle. It doesn't have to be the specific angle like I'm doing it, as you can see, but something like that, so you've got it ready to go. So you want to put that there roughly near your work, because you don't want to have to stretch over somewhere with the iron for miles and miles to get to the solder. You want to have it near where you're working, so I generally put mine there. And I'm also going to bring in some of this stuff. This is, if you've not seen it before, this is flux paste, and it's very, very good, and it comes in a little tub like this, and again you can buy this on eBay or Amazon or any good electrical shop. I got mine on eBay from the States, and this is really, really good stuff. It looks like that, and it's basically an agent that makes sure there's a nice even flow between the job and the solder. So it prevents, if you've got, for example, work that's a little bit greasy or a little bit not clean, it's not, a little bit dirty should I say, this stuff really ensures a good flow with the soldering iron and with the job, and it makes a nice soldering job. So people say, well, I don't like using it, I use something else. If that's what you want to do, then fine, but for first time solderers, which is what this video is aimed at today, I'd get yourself a tub of this, and it's by Fry, F-R-Y, and this is basically a very, very good thing to have in your soldering toolbox, because it will help you so much, and I'll show you how it works, and when you see it work you'll say, wow, that is something I need to definitely invest in, and it is good. And you don't have to use this particular brand, by the way. You can buy any soldering paste out there, but this just comes in a handy little tub, and it's quite reasonable on eBay to buy. So there we go, and it's ideal for lead-free solder. So we don't want to use lead solder, because lead gives off a lot of fumes and is very bad for the old lungs, and it gives you lots of headaches. So we don't want to use lead solder, by the way. This is lead-free solder I'm using. So most solder these days on the market is lead-free. However, you can get some lead solder still out there, but don't buy it because it's a little bit dangerous. So we want to be all about safety and for our health, and we want to live lots and lots of years and carry on doing the hobby for lots and lots of years. So do not use lead solder, use lead-free. Anyway, so we've got our soldering paste there and our solder, and we've got our workstation ready to go. So what we're going to be doing today is soldering some wires to the track. Now I've got a really old set of Hornby points here, and as you can see they're quite old, they're not in use anymore. I'm just using this for a demonstration, and what we're really going to do is, let's just say for example we're going to solder a wire. Bear with me 1 second. I'll just get a pointy device, and when I mean pointy device, something to illustrate where I'm pointing to rather than my finger. So we're going to be using a wire here, for example, right? and a wire onto there. So one wire there and one wire on the inside of there, just for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to put a solder wire there and a solder wire there on those two rails. Alright, so what I'll do, I'll show you how to do that right now. So as mentioned, we've got everything in preparation, but we haven't got the wires done yet. So that's the most important thing, is to make sure the wires are cut to length and also what's called tinned. So there's our subject wire there, number 1 wire, and there's our second wire here, number 2 wire, or your plus and minus wire. So what you want to do is, I've cut mine already, because as they say on television, here's one I prepared earlier, and this is the sort of length you want to strip back on your wire there. You can see that at home. I'll try and zoom this in as best I can so you can see it. If you can see that at home there, that's how much wire you want to do from the insulation material on there. Not too much, but just enough. So once you've stripped back your wire to that length there, what you want to do next is what's called tinning. And before you tin, you want to just take the wire like this, by the way, and normally you've got strands in the wire, and believe it or not, if you break off one of the strands in a piece of wire, it affects how much voltage is transferred to the item, be it a motor or a pickup or something that's obviously requiring all those strands to pass the current through that piece of wire to the item it's connected to. So if a wire's got, for example, 15 strands, it needs those 15 strands complete, transfer the current through that wire to get to whatever you're soldered to. If you're, say, soldering with 12 strands instead of 15, then the voltage transferred will be slightly less because you've got a couple of strands missing, and it is important. So if you've ever stripped back wire and you've broken a few strands off and thought, well, it doesn't matter, it does actually, because if you're actually using things like motors, for example, on a loco, that's very important that you always make sure that you keep all the strands in the wire correct and you don't break any off if you can help it. So what I normally do is strip back that amount of wire, and then simply what I would do, take it between the thumb and finger and just twist it around like this, like that. So you twist it around, and you can do this at home as well on your bit of wire. Just twist it round basically with the thumb and finger, so you get something like that, as I've shown you earlier. So all the wires are all twisted round in one neat little lump. So now comes the fun part. We're going to what's called tin it. So you're going to apply some solder to the end of that. So before we begin, what we need to do is prepare our iron. So we haven't used our iron for a while. It's already heated up, but we need to tin what's called tin the bit. So when you tin the bit of your soldering iron, this is what you do. Hopefully you'll be able to do this at home. So you're going to take the iron from the station, carefully remove it. It's nice and hot, and you can see there the bit is quite dull, the tip on the iron there. So we need to make that nice and shiny with some solder. So what we do, take your solder in your finger like that, bring in your iron, and just simply, as you can see, now don't leave it like that as a blob, wipe it on the sponge very quickly. Now that's got a nice, hopefully you see that at home, shiny finish. Alright, now that is ready to go. It's nice and tinned. So what we're going to do now is put it back in the station like that. It's now ready to go for the job. What we're going to do is our little lolly stick that we used as our pointer earlier, that now has got promoted to flux spreader. So what you do, bring in like that, and just put a little bit of flux on the end of that wire. Don't have to have masses and masses of it on there. Alright. But the idea is just to basically, as you can see at home there, what I've done, I've just coated that wire in some of that flux material. Don't worry about if there's a little bit too much on there, but don't overdo it, if you know what I mean. Just enough on there like that, as you can see. Alright, so what you do, having got the flux on the wire, you then bring in some more solder, bring in your solder, and all we're going to do is we're going to transfer some solder from the solder reel to the iron and then straight onto the wire, and you'll see how fast this is and how really great it works. So your iron's nice and hot, it's tinned as we did a few seconds ago. Bring in some solder, not too much, about 2 or 3 dabs on the wire, and then straight in from left to right, like that. Now you see how quick that was. I just went from there to there very quickly with the iron, and as you can see, we've got a nice, you might not be able to see that at home too well, but hopefully you'll be able to see that. We've got a nice shiny soldered tinned end of the wire, so you can be able to see that at home. There we are. You see how different that looks? Yeah, because that's now tinned. It's got some solder on there ready to go onto what we're going to solder it to, and that will help it flow better. So even though we've done that, we still need to clean our iron because our iron's a little bit messy at the end. So all we do, bring it over to your tray, a few dabs on there like that, so you clean it, reapply the solder on the end, wipe it once, stick it back in the holder, it's ready to go. Now we'll put our wire to one side and we'll bring in the actual job, what we're going to actually solder to. So in this instance, as mentioned before, it's our piece of track. So you notice the side, if I can bring this up to the camera, you can see the side of the rail there, yeah, or the web as we used to call it on BR, British Railways, which is still called web of the rail, which is basically the side bit on the outside and inside. Right, that area there is a little bit dirty. It's got dirt on there, a bit of grease probably, and a bit of paint from where I weathered it before, and it's generally in a bit of a grimy state. So if we soldered directly to that now, that probably 99.9% would not stick too well. It wouldn't really make a good connection. So what we need to do is tidy it up. And what I generally do is I just get some normal fine grade sandpaper, or you can use a wire brush, that works just as well, but I find sandpaper is a bit more manageable, and also it's easier to hold and manage. So what we do, for example, the area we're going to solder should I say, generally about 2 sleepers worth. Just clean that little area there, so you don't need to do the whole piece of the rail, just that area of the web of the rail, and hopefully you'll see this at home. I'm just going to come in there with the sandpaper and just clean it up as well. Alright. Apologies, my hand's in the way there. I'll try and come out of focus a little bit. Right, the other thing you can do as well is just tidy it up this way. You can use a file. In fact, I'm going to switch over to a file, so I think it's a lot easier, to be honest with you. And if you've got a file set at home, then do use one. And I'm going to use my file quite like so. So there's my file, then I'm going to use my file just to really tidy this area up. That's better. If you've got files at home, you can use it like that, but if you haven't, you can use sandpaper. But I'm just doing this for the purpose of this video because it's a lot quicker, and I don't want to waste your time because you might have something better else to do. Right, that's better. So you see what I've done there. Basically I've cleaned up the job, which is this area here. Alright, that's now clean and ready to go for soldering. And once you've cleaned that off, which is what we've done there, alright, that's now ready to go. So what we've got to do, you remember earlier when I showed you how to tin the wire up and you apply the flux paste and then you add your solder? Well, that's exactly the same process for what we can do with this. So what I do, this is how I do it. Yeah, I just take a little bit of this flux paste with my lolly stick, and I'm just going to apply. Alright, let's just say for example you've got your bit of track on the layout. What I would do is clean it up like I've just done there, and I'll stick a little bit of solder paste just on the side of the where you're going to solder. So the area you're going to solder, it might be on a piece of curved track, it might be on a straight bit like that. But can you see where that is now? It's just on the web of the inside of the rail bit, the flat bit inside the rail. I've added some flux paste in that area. And you might only be in between those two sleepers, for example, where the wire's going to go. So let's do that now. So what I'm going to do is, hopefully this will work. I'm just going to adjust the camera because I want to show you how to do this, but that's better. There you go, that's better, isn't it? That's much better. Why didn't I do that before? Never mind, the wonders of YouTube. So that's much better. We can see what we're doing. So now you can see hopefully this in action. So we've got our flux paste on the side of the rail there. We've cleaned it up before. The iron has been tinned and the wire has been tinned. So now we need to introduce the wire to the side of the rail. And what I normally do, let me just bring this out 1 second, guys. I will take the wire, as you can see it's straight vertically like that. What you need to do is bend it at an angle like that. Just make a little gooseneck, so it's like that. So you've got that sort of angle. And the reason is, you want this piece of the wire to be flush with the side of the rail, and that will make it a whole lot easier for soldering and later on dropping it through the baseboard through a pre-drilled hole right next to your solder joint. So what I normally do is something like that. You can shorten it like that if you wish to, but that's the general consensus, is to basically achieve that kind of angle with your wire. And then hopefully this will work. If it doesn't, it'll be really funny and you can all laugh. Let's put it on something that we can do this with. So I think what we're going to do is just adjust things here. So we'll replicate the baseboard. Let's just say this is our imaginary piece of baseboard work here. So I'll just bring this up a little bit. So these two storage jars are going to be our imaginary piece of baseboard. Alright. So what we'll do is we'll just set this up like this. Okay. So let's just say, for argument's sake, we've got our hole drilled through the baseboard. Alright. And we're going to feed our wire through the baseboard underneath. Remember, this is just an imaginary baseboard setup, but this is how you do it in real life. Yeah? So you poke your wire through there like that. You then come in with your iron. Alright. Just bring this round here 1 second so you can see what I'm doing. Zoom out ever so, that's better. Right, so we've got our imaginary baseboard set up like this, as mentioned. There's our wire. You want to do it right to the side of the rail. Bring your iron in, which is nice and hot. Bit of solder on the end, and just hold it onto the job like that. Let it cool for a few seconds, not even that. And as you can see at home, right, I'm pulling really hard on that. You can pull as hard as you like on that, that will not come off. And that's your basic solder joint. As you can see, it's on the inside, it's on the outside of the rail, and the flange of the wheels of your rolling stock and loco go on the inside here, so that will not derail. And what you can do if you notice on top of the head of the rail, which is the running surface, there's a tiny bit of solder that's gone onto the top of the rail that might affect the running of that. So what you can do is you come in with your file and you do what's called draw filing. Now draw filing means you hold it on the work flat as you can and you just basically go across that area like that. Now in reality on your baseboard your track will be flat on the baseboard. You just solder the wire to the side of the rail here, but you do this on top of the baseboard wherever you are, or even if you haven't soldered it if you haven't put it on the baseboard yet, you can still do this process somewhere else. But the principle is here, just to draw file it across the rail, and that is how you do that. Very simple, very quick, very easy to do. And as you can see, the wire is now permanently and electrically connected to that rail. And all you do, you can just tuck that wire, for example. You see how I'm doing that on the other side of the sleeper? Now you'd have a hole a little bit bigger slightly than the wire itself. That would go through your baseboard, and that would then go down underneath the baseboard at that angle, and then obviously into a terminal block, and then obviously into a transformer which you control your trains from. And this kind of wiring basically also works with DCC as well. So if you're doing DCC on your layout, for example, then this principle of soldering will work with that as well. Okay, so that's basically how you solder a wire to the track. Now some of you out there watching this may say, oh, that joint's crap, or it's not very tidy. I've seen some really bad soldering out there, and mine probably is possibly within that category. But it works for me, and those of you that see my layout, the results that it produces, I get reliable, smooth running every single time. I switch the transformers on and power up, it always is reliable. So that's how you solder your wires to the track with a joint like that. The only thing I say I've made a bit of a mess up there is that the wire itself is a little bit too long. You can always trim that a little bit shorter to do that, but generally it's best to have a little bit too much extra than not enough wire. So as you can see, it's a neat joint, and when that's actually sitting on the layout permanently and it's weathered up or painted, it's maybe some ballast over that, or some weathering powders for the track, or some paint, you would not notice that, and even at a distance you would not notice that. And as your layout ages naturally in time, you will not notice that wire is there, and no one's going to come out and say, oh, those big wire, horrible wire sticking everywhere, like a train set sort of thing, and you won't have that anymore. And what you would do, for example, you drill a hole on the other side of the baseboard for this side of the rail and repeat the process. So again, you'd come in excuse me, with your file again and just clean that area up, tin your wire, then apply some flux on there like we did before, apply your tinned wire with some solder, and then you repeat the process. Once you've actually finished with the iron, the most important thing to remember with the soldering iron, let's just tie this up a little bit over here, apologies. The most important thing to remember with a soldering iron, once you finish with it and you put it away, always make sure that you clean it beforehand. So it's done some soldering, but it's got a little bit dirty on the tip, so all we're going to do is just basically wipe it in the tray here, clean it off in there. That's still nice and wet in that sponge, so you can probably hear it hissing away because it's still wet. Give it a nice clean in there. So you want to just make sure the end is clean, and then what I normally do is come in with some solder and just tin the end like that again, wipe it once in there like that, and that is really, as you can see, nice and clean and ready to go for next time. So pop that in there. Now before we finish off this video, you may want to see how to solder a wire to another wire. That's the other thing that people have maybe asked to see, or maybe that something else you want to try as well. Sometimes you can't always join two wires together with a terminal block. You can twist two wires together, and there's many ways of joining two wires together. You can twist them together You can wrap tape around them, which doesn't look very nice, and in time they'll pull apart or come loose. So what you need to do is to do a permanent connection with the piece of wire. So what I would do, as mentioned before, I'm going to join two pieces of wire together, quite simply, quite effectively. Now, I'm going to use something I've just found on my workbench here, a piece of scrap wire. It's an old Hornby power clip, one of those pin things that go on the track. As you can see, it's got a connector on one end and just a bare bit of wire. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to strip this, and then we're going to solder it to our baseboard wire. Yeah, so that's what we're going to be doing. So what I'll do, I'll strip that and I'll come back to you. Okay, welcome back. So what I've done, as you can see, I've stripped the end of this wire, as you can see there. I'll just zoom it in so you can see what I've done. Sorry about that. The wonders of modern technology. There we go. As you can see there, the wire's stripped at that end, very, very short, and I've also got the end of that cable there stripped to the same amount. So what I'm going to do, quite simply, is I'm going to bring in our old friend, the flux, and just pop a little bit of flux on that wire there. Hope that's not out of camera shot, by the way, you can see that. Alright, so we're going to join these two wires together. Now you can do the old fashioned way of twisting two wires together. It's not really reliable, and you want a more permanent, good electrical solid connection. And certainly for model railways, twisting two bits of wire together, that's fine for a train set going around the table on the carpet or something like that. I shouldn't have said carpet, that's a cardinal sin. Don't put model railways on carpets. I'll rephrase that. If you're doing a temporary setup, for example, then you can twist two wires together. It does work, and when you finish at the end of the day, you can take the wires apart, stick it back in the box or whatever, and just do it that way. But if you're having a permanent layout, which I'm sure most of you are getting the stage of having, and you're building your first permanent layout, you're going to want wires that are reliable, and they're going to stay there until whenever they're removed again. So you want something permanent, as mentioned. So this is the best solution, rather than twist two wires together, I find. And you're going to come in and just put a little bit of solder paste, or flux as it's called, on both wires. As you can see, I'm doing this, and they're both covered there in the flux material. So this is what we're going to do. It's dead simple to do. We're going to get our solder wire in there like so. It might be out of shot, but I'll just show you. I'll bring the camera out a little bit so you can see what we're doing. So let's put our subject on the operating table. Actually, you can hold one wire, believe it or not, with the other. You can hold one wire at the same time, basically. So you want to just hold it in position like that. And I'm going to bring the soldering iron in, apply it to the end of the solder wire, get some solder on there, and I'll solder it up. But I'll zoom the camera in to show you the process of how easy it is to do. Alright. So, take the iron out of the station. You'll hear me tin up the iron with the solder. Like so. And the secret is hold it for a few seconds, let it go, clean the iron in the tray, in the water sponge there, take it out, and as you can see, it's not perfect, but hey, there we go. That's your two wires soldered together. And what you can do after these are soldered like that, I would wrap a piece of tape around that if you want, or a heat shrink sleeve. They work just as well. But if these are under the baseboard like that, then they're going to be out of sight and out of mind. No one's going to see it too much, apart from you who goes under there. But the main thing is, though, that's a good soldered, reasonably good soldered joint. It's not perfect, as you can see. There's many people out there, I'm sure, on YouTube that can solder way better than me, and good luck to him. But you know what, this works for me and it will work for you as well. And if I try to pull those apart now, I'm seriously pulling on those wires and they are not coming apart, and that is what I'm aiming for you guys at home to be able to do. That's my main aim and wish for you at the end of this video, is that you can solder something reliable and half decent like that, so you can basically have a really good, excellent working layout, and everything will work electrically really well. Alright, so that's how you solder two wires together, and you basically get a decent result like that. Desoldering wires is very easy. All you do, you can use your iron, again, make sure it's nice and hot, and you just, as soon as you touch a soldered joint, it'll come apart like that. Yeah. Make sure you always clean your iron. As you can see, I'm doing the, just off camera shot there, I'm cleaning the tip in the tray there. Alright, re-tin your wire on your iron, so you, two little dabs, stick it back in the holder, ready to go. So as you can see, they came apart quite easily and they soldered reasonably quick together, and the reason was because the iron is nice and hot. So I'm using a good quality iron that gets very hot and stays hot, and also the job was cleaned up with some flux paste, and the wires went together quite easily, as you saw. So in reality, that's how you solder. The whole point is to make sure you've got an iron that actually works, that gets nice and hot, and you keep the job and the whole thing nice and clean. So for example, just to reiterate the point, when you're going to solder wires to a piece of track, clean the side of the rails first, the web area, which is the side of the rails, and then make sure that your iron is nice and hot. Use flux paste if you wish. The secret is to get the job nice and hot, i.e. a nice hot iron. That is the secret of soldering in a nutshell. Have a hot iron that actually stays nice and hot, and keep whatever you're soldering to nice and clean beforehand, and you will have great results. So there we go, soldering tips there, very basic, very simple to do. I know mine's not fantastic, but that is how I solder, and that works not just for track, but I do it on many projects as well. I'll just show you that this isn't something that I make up. I'll actually demonstrate this. I'm just going to get my scrap box, and when I mean scrap box, excuse the mess, because it is like that. That literally is my scrap box. It's full of loads of bits and pieces in there that I muck about with and do. And when you begin into the hobby of model railways, you will accumulate hopefully a scrap box as well, because when something breaks, don't throw it out, it's always handy. And for example here, I've got an old Hornby Railroad Castle class tender, the chassis of it, and as you can see, it's got some pickups on there. Now let's just say, for example, for argument's sake, I wanted to solder a wire off this bus bar. The bus bar is basically a long strip of copper or conductive material that has many terminals coming off it, and you've got this bus bar type pickup on these three wheels, for example, as you can see at home. Now let's just say excuse me, that I wanted to solder a wire for some reason, whatever reason it was. I'm going to put a wire from this bus bar to something else inside the tender body. So what we'll do is exactly the same process. We'll clean the job up. Say we're going to solder in this area. Take a bit of sandpaper, because it's going to be greasy and oily and covered in dirt, so we need to just polish that area up. Spend a little bit of time in that area there, not too much, just a little bit. Alright, as you can see, you've got a, you see the shiny area there where I've cleaned it with the sandpaper, which is what we want. And guess what we do next? You've guessed it, yep, we put a little bit of flux. A little bit of flux in that area. Alright, that's all you need, for example, for this job, something like that. Alright. Put the lid on the flux for a second. And then we're going to say we're going to use this piece of wire that we did earlier. But you know what? We're going to cut this wire because it's a little bit messy. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to use just basically these pliers here, just nip that off like that, so you've got a fresh start. And I'm going to take a little bit off the end of there, like that. Okay, that's what you're looking for. So again, I'm just going to twist it around with our thumb and fingers, like that. Spin it round. I normally find by holding it with your fingers like that, for example, any bit of wire, and just twisting it with the other, thus so, gets all your strands together in a nice little, neat little stump, like that. And then get it come in with a bit of flux paste like that. Alright. And just repeat the whole process what we did earlier on with a bit of track. Exactly the same. Same process. Alright. I'm going to do a bit of solder. Alright. I'm in like that. And just touch it. Very, very quick. As soon as that hot iron touches that fluxed up piece of wire, it really sticks to that nice and reliably. So the flux does help. I just realised on camera I said something that sounded a little bit inappropriate. A fluxed up piece of wire. It didn't sound like it sounded almost like a naughty word, didn't it? But I didn't mean it as that. I think you know that. So we take some wire off the solder reel, and all we're going to do is directly put it on there, like that. Now hopefully at home you saw and heard how quickly that solder flowed on there. Alright, look at that. That is really when you see the magic and beauty of soldering, how well that goes on there. As you can see, that is really well and truly stuck on there. It's literally welded to the copper. You cannot pull. Really tugging at that, that's not coming off. So for example, if you were soldering a wire to a motor from a terminal and it was obviously going off there, something like that, that is how you would achieve that. And all I did was I put some flux on the wire, tinned it up, and then applied a little bit of flux to the surface of the other job. Got my nice hot iron, applied some solder, and then directly applied the solder with the iron to the job and the other wire. And that's what happened. You get a nice, reasonably smooth joint. Now if you was obviously putting this cable, for example, inside a motor housing or a tender, or should I say a body of a loco, then obviously that kind of joint would be disguised. No one would see that. It'd be covered by something else, or it'd be housed internally, so no one would see that joint on there. But that's a reasonably smooth joint, I think. And I think it's quite reliable. So again, you can achieve that result at home with your soldering iron, such as this model that I've got here. And if you've got one of these and went out and bought it, and you thought, I'm not sure how to start using the thing, and what do I do? And basically this is something that you can do at home. And hopefully by the end of today you'd have hopefully seen some good results, and something that you can go out and do after this video on the layout, whatever project you're working on, and get the same results. Anyway, thank you for listening to me waffling on today. Hope you've enjoyed the video, and the main aim of this video was to show you some very basic ideas of some soldering. And if you can go out and do what I've shown you to do, then it's job done and you've achieved the right results, hopefully. Anyway, let me know how you get on with your projects. Let me know if it goes well. And if there's anything else you'd like to see in terms of some handy tips and ideas, whether it's some scenery ideas, locomotive service and repair ideas, give me a shout and I'll try and do it. Anyway, happy modelling, good luck with the soldering, and the most important thing, as well as having a hot iron and your stuff prepared, the most important thing to remember about soldering, and this is an invaluable tip that anybody in the hobby and profession will tell you: always practice at what you do. Keep at it, don't give up. If you solder the first couple of times it doesn't go quite right, don't throw it away and don't walk off and give up. Come back to it, have another go, keep practicing, because you will get better and better with your soldering. The more you practice with it and the more that you do it, you will find that you'll get a really good unique knack for it. And it's like anything else in the hobby, you've got to practice and have a go and jump in and get your hands dirty and prepare to learn and make mistakes and have a go yourself. Anyway, wherever you are around the world, thanks for watching, hope you have a great day and enjoy your soldering, and I will see you very soon with another video. Take care, God bless, bye bye.